about that radical truthfulness and radical transparency. If you can achieve it, there's no confusion. Because if we're really truthful, we're taking all those hidden agendas and all those other things, and we're not confused. We're putting them on the table.
Yes.
And if you understand the art of thoughtful disagreement, how to disagree well, so that you can then learn from each other or get past your disagreement in an idea meritocratic way, it is incredibly powerful. And we're not taught that. We're not taught some of these things. We're not taught the value of failure.
Definitely not.
We're not taught, we're taught to be right, to be attached to our views of being right.
Yep.
You can't learn if you're attached to being right, because you think it's embarrassing because you don't know. So that notion of thoughtful disagreement, because if there's disagreement, somebody must be wrong. And how do you know that wrong person isn't you? So these are the things that if you have thoughtful disagreement, radical truthfulness, radical transparency, you build trust and effectiveness.
Yeah. And that really sounds like it requires the pulverizing of the ego. Like that to me sounds like we really have to crush and break down this ego, because our ego is what's we're confronted with, of believing I'm right, I'm going to win, right? Whenever you're in a disagreement and you handle it badly, you think it's win or loss.
That's right. I think the greatest tragedy of mankind, big statement, the greatest tragedy of mankind.
Wait for it.
The greatest tragedy of mankind, because it's so much, it stands in the way of so many people making decisions well and operating well with each other, is holding an opinion in your head that's wrong. And it's such a tragedy, meaning it's so easily fixed,
so true,
that all you have to do is put it out there and stress test it and say, I might be wrong. And how do I stress test it? And by stress testing it, you raise your probabilities of being right. So I think the education system rewards being right. So many things reward that being right that stands in the way of taking in all that's out there to really help you be right.
I think that's such a powerful point. I'm just nodding away. If you're only listening, then I'm nodding away, because when you say that, I think that's so true, that all of our conditioned patterns are about being right. It's never been to understand things from different angles or perspectives, which is what reality is much more of than being right or wrong or black or white. And so much of our patterns in our mind are always win or loss, right or wrong, one or two. There's rarely this cohesive synergy that you're speaking about. That actually takes a lot more work to get to.
The greatest, whatever success I've had in life has had much more to do with my knowing how to deal with my not knowing than anything that I know. Because what I don't know is vastly greater. Think about all the experts that you can turn to and all the perspectives that you can get and how much you can learn by what's being out there. And that maximizes, and it's a kick.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, the other thing which we've already dived into today, you called your book Principles. And I thought that was quite a counterculture way of doing it, in a good way. And the reason I say that is today, so much of the language around business and work or entrepreneurship is around doing. It's around having. It's around grinding. It's, these are the terms and the language that's used around business, whereas you go back and you talk about principles. And on the phone when we were speaking, you were talking about this differentiation between doing and then living a principled life. Just explain that to us and why you believe we have to start with principles.
I'm going to start by explaining how I learned it.
Yes, please.
And what principled thinking is and how it's different from other types of normal thinking, what most people do, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a suggestion I'd like to pass along to those who are listening. What I found was that whenever I would make an important decision, I would write down my criteria for making that decision, because that situation would come along again. So I could be clear. It helped me clarify my thinking. And when the next time it came along, I would start to see how to deal with that, and I could refine my principles. So the book is a compendium of these principles that I wrote over 25 years on that situation. It changed my way of thinking, and it also changed my way of interacting, because then I would see everything as another one of those. Rather than be in the blizzard of these bits and pieces of things coming at me, I would start to think, oh, it's one of those.
Yes.
And I would then operate as what was my principle. And those principles became like internalized. So think of it almost like a batter batting against a pitcher who sometimes throws curveballs, sometimes throws fastballs, sometimes throws sliders. And if you do that over a period of time, you begin to learn, oh, that's a fastball. And then you start to think, okay, the fastball, I operate this. And you start to internalize. You become better and better, and life becomes simpler for you because you're not seeing those millions of bits and pieces. You're seeing it as another one of those. And you have that instinctual ability that allows you to then make that decision and operate that way. And then you can communicate with people on principled levels thinking. You know, it's particularly important because I would say the decline of religion, the decline, in other words, even your values, you have to think, what is your religion? If you chose a religion, and it's not a preconditioned religion, what are your values? What are your principles? How do you think life really works? And you're making choices for yourself. That is the form of those principles. So when you start to think about those and you're clear about those and you can communicate with others, you can see whether your principles are aligned with others or not. Because if you don't get along with somebody, and those irreconcilable differences are due to the fact that there are deep differences in principles, not differences in interpretations of things and so on. It's like any great relationship. There'll be arguments along the way, but it is those core beliefs. And by being clear about them, clear to yourself and clear to others, it's very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It just makes it so much more simpler to navigate, because you're so right that when you don't have that clarity, all you're being attacked with is so much noise. And there's just so many millions of different pieces of noise that are coming at you that you haven't filtered, you haven't clarified, you haven't carefully selected. And that's why we feel so overwhelmed today. We're drowning in all of that noise.
And what for?
Exactly.
Where are you going? What for? What are you seeking to fulfill? What is it in you?
Yeah. And I think that this is where I'd recommend everyone who's listening or watching right now, I'd love for you to take a moment to do that exercise in your own time that Ray's just laid out, of really figuring out what are your criteria behind decisions, why you're making those decisions, what's pushing you towards them. For me as well, whenever I have a number of options, what I do is I write down all my options and choices I have, and I write down on top of them why I would take them. And often my why for something would be just pride or ego, and often above one of them it will be love and depth and values.
Well, here's the exercise. You're talking about the writing down.
Yes.
Okay. I'm saying the writing down. I recommend to your listeners,
please
write them down. Okay. Do your reflections and then you write them down. It helps. It clarifies it. The other thing that happens is I think of the mind as being there are almost two yous in you. There is a conscious, logical you, and there's a subliminal, emotional you.
Yes.
That you don't understand. That was Freud's great discovery.
Yes.
That there is a part of your brain that is really controlling you, but because it's not conscious to you, you don't know it's there and it's controlling you. And the key, I think, is to align those things. Like there's intuition or there's those emotions. And when they come up and you're seeing yourself doing things, if you can reflect on yourself and align your subliminal with your cerebral, it helps you because you have a double check. That emotional thing, like maybe it's an intuition. Well, maybe it's right and maybe it's wrong. So respect it. It's coming up, but look at it with that logical. And when you achieve that alignment, writing helps you do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And if you're sitting there going, I'm not a writer, first try. And if after trying, if you still feel you're not a writer, voice note yourself, speak it out to yourself and hear yourself back. Because when you hear, because you're used to listening to other people, you'll also be able to start listening to your subconscious self. And that's going to help you really try and bring that alignment and clarity together.
And then you'll start to see that there's a limited number, maybe a few hundred, maybe a couple hundred circumstances or whatever. You're going to start to see everything happens over and over again. You're going to understand yourself better. It's very wonderful.
Absolutely. I love that. In one of these principles, you talk about this scale of savoring the experience, savoring life, and then making an impact. And I wanted to know how you reconcile the two and how you've seen them grow together.
I think the big choice in life, there are a lot of big choices in life, but is accomplishment versus savoring life. Okay? So, savoring life is smell the roses and what a beautiful day, or that moment, make sure you time with the people that you love and all of that. And then there's the other, which is accomplishment and impact, right? So there is those kinds of choices. And you have to discover yourself well. Where are you and how do you deal with those types of things? I think the most effective is where they align.
Right.
Okay. That's I think the key.
Right.
Like to make your work, your passion one and the same, right? That kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's I think that's the best.
Yeah.
Okay, your accomplishment. If you're passionate, and then you can maybe have those things align. But that's the choice in life, right? And you could see that in different cultures.
Yes. Yeah. And today we see a lot of with all of the generations that we're in and seeing in work right now, there's a desire to have it all. There's a desire to have great pay, a great job that's meaningful, and have lots of time off to go on holiday and be able to, go out on a Friday night and have a good time. And I feel like this desire to have everything is quite a challenge, because then you're striving to have all of these different paths. Go on.
That's what the second phase of the life is like. First phase of the life is, you learn, and really it's generally a lot of fun. And also, by the way, you think you can conquer the universe. And then you come to this other phase where it's all open and so on. And what you find out is there are too many things to do. You don't have enough time. Okay. You don't have enough time for each one of those things. And so the question is, how do you deal with that? Well, there are two ways you can deal with it. You can, of course, prioritize, and you need to do that. But the real way, most importantly, is to know how to get the most out of an hour. In other words, you can put more life into life if you know how to get leverage and if you know how to be as effective. Because if you get more out of each hour, wow, then it's like more life within those constrained number of hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always described that for me as time management versus energy management. And for me, if I can bring all my energy into 1 hour, that's more powerful than me having 10 hours of half the energy.
And but in addition, there are techniques. Right.
Love to hear some.
Well, like for example, I learned leverage through other people. Once you learn leverage, in my particular case, of course, I built up to this. I have about 30 direct reports. And what it means is, now this is after years of doing, I had nothing, by the way. But what I can do is, and with the good relationships and how that works, basically they can typically work for about 50 hours on something that I'm trying to accomplish for every hour that I deal with them.
Right.
So I get an enormous amount of leverage, or I know how to prioritize, or I know how to break my schedule, knowing I mentioned meditation or other things to get myself the clarity.
Yeah.
So there are many techniques. I wrote a bunch of them in the books, and many other people have other techniques too.
Yeah.
But as you start to realize that you can have much more life by knowing these various types of techniques.
Yeah. I'd love to know some of your tips and techniques around prioritization. I think that's something that people are so challenged with right now. What have been some of your best principles or rules around how to prioritize something?
I don't want to give people my priorities, but I do want to give them the notion of to go above it. Okay, like the same rule, if you're in a disagreement, you go above it. Okay, so many people are in the blizzard of all these things coming at them, and they're in it, and they're trying to deal with every one of those. Okay, so pause and step back, and then start to think, what are you really going after? You have to look subliminally. It may be deep-seated in your childhood. It may be, but what is that pull? Okay, and that becomes, and then how do you apportion it? You do need a plan. You need some sort of self-discipline as you look down and you say, well, I'm going to spend dinners with my kids, or I'm going to do X, Y, Z in terms of those to-dos. But at the highest level, you're saying, what do I want? What are my choices? Because you have to realize. And then what I find is, if you pause and you do that slowly over time, don't just try to do it in a minute. You can find that you can have a lot of your cake and eat it too, right? I used to take my kids on my business trips.
What a great education. Wow. Crazy.
It's an example that sometimes you discover with time that you can have your cake and eat it too, right?
Yeah.
So take the time.
Yeah, patience. Patience is...
I think that there's 5 steps to success. First is you have to know your goals. You have to know what you're going out there. And that does require prioritization. The second is on your way to your goals, you're going to encounter your problems, your failures, your problems. So that's step 2, encounter them. They're standing in your way. Number 3 is you have to diagnose those to the root cause. What is producing your problems?
At the root.
At the root cause. And that may be that you, or it may be those around you who are not good at things or whatever, or you're doing something you need to do better. Or it may be that you're in the wrong place. But you have to get at the root cause to do that diagnosis. Once you know the specific thing that's standing in your way, that personal discovery process, you have to go to the 4th step. And that 4th step is to design a way to get around them.
Yeah.
If it may be, for example, that if you have a particular weakness, work with somebody who is strong where you're weak. Or it may be change your job or whatever it is, but you've got to get around that specific thing that you've diagnosed as standing in your way. And then when you have a design, you have to do it. A lot of people come up with designs, but they don't push through and do it. And I think life is just the constant 5-step process over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because if you can do those 5 things, you will be successful. You'll evolve fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you add 2 methods or keys to succeeding, which you call flexibility and self-accountability, because within those 5 steps, there's going to need to be a bit of flexibility or a lot of flexibility and self-accountability. And I love you pointed this out. You said, don't blame bad outcomes on anyone but yourself, which is like huge self-accountability.
Yeah. I really do believe, I'll give you a mindset. I do believe that I can do anything and that it is just a matter of my character and my creativity. So that it is a personal test of me. It may be difficult, and I have to be creative enough, and maybe with the help of others. And that is largely true. Really, if you're creative enough and you don't have to do it yourself, you can get the ideas from other people, and then you are enough character in it to do it. Wow.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest challenge, that we try and do it all on our own. We think we have to be everything. We think we have to be the face and the background and the side and everything in between. And actually, collaboration, coming together with other people is so much more what has brought success in the world.
Yes. When you start to realize that actually you can't see, it's like going from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, or black and white to color, that when you start to see things through others' eyes, you can see the world in a totally different, much richer way, and you know how to navigate it. It's such a power, such a gift.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much, Ray. Ray, this has been such an incredible experience diving in with you. Anyone who's listening and watching, I hope you've been taking notes. I hope you stopped and did certain activities when Ray and I spoke about them. And Ray, we finish every interview with a final 5, which is our final 5 quick fire round, rapid fire round. So these are answers that are 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So I'm going to start with the first one. What's one trait you look for in a potential employee?
Character.
Amazing. Okay, great. Number 2, what is one trait you possess that you believe you got to where you are today? One of your traits.
Fear, humility, fear and acceptance of failing.
Wow. I love that answer. That's awesome. I was not expecting that. It's a great answer. Sorry, I'm going off the tangent now because but you can explain that. I love that one.
And a taste for adventure, because the joy of the adventure it makes it all worthwhile. And I've come to appreciate the pain.
Yeah. What's the best thing you've learned from this transition in your life where you're now passing it on? What's something you've learned from the process of passing lessons on?
That it's hard and to let go.
To let go of?
To let go of caring while caring.
Right, yes. That's such an important point. Absolutely, yeah. As a teacher, as a guide, as a coach, you can only facilitate growth, but you can't force it.
Just let it,
Yeah. You've got to give everyone the opportunity and let it out. Okay, number 4. What's one thing in stage 3 you're looking forward to the most, to the stage of life that you're in right now?
Well, as Joseph Campbell said, to be free to live and free to die. I think that you're in an arc in which you gain freedom, total freedom, no obligation. The greatest joy now is no obligation.
Yeah,
I'm free.
Yeah, amazing.
And to watch others be successful without me. That is the greatest joy, to watch others to be successful without me. I'm free and they are successful without me.
Wow. Amazing. Well, you wrote this book over a number of principles, and the 5th and final question is, what's a principle that you've learned this year, or that you're currently trying to learn or learning or testing this year?
Well, this is my transition year. I guess what I've learned, I've been so pleased to have the interactions with people who are learning. I don't know if it's a principle. It's not a principle, but it's an experience that the interactions that I'm having on social media, the conversations, so many nice people, and the exchanges have just been so beautiful. I think that was my main discovery as I'm also going through my evolutionary process of that I described.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing, Ray. You're absolutely incredible. If anyone loved the conversation today, make sure you go and grab a copy of Principles by Ray Dalio. If you haven't already, if you have read the book, which I know many of you are very excited, we were going to have Ray on the podcast, go ahead and follow him on social media and across all the other channels if you don't already. Ray, is there a particular channel that you would prefer everyone to go follow you on? Is there, or every, you've got Facebook, there's Instagram, there's YouTube. Go ahead and follow Ray across all the channels. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you grab a copy of the book. Today, we just literally scratched the surface of all the incredible principles that are inside.
I'd like to add one thing.
Sure, please.
I put the book and also video case studies and everything in a free app.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to buy a book. You can get the book. It's on the iOS Apple store. It's a free download, and it has videos.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Free. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the book is great if you like books, but you also have this other video, which is a live. You might like that.
That's awesome. And there's so many great episodes that I've been watching on Ray's social channels as well that really break down and visualize these principles for you to check out. Thank you so much for being a subscriber to On Purpose. Rate and review this podcast. And most importantly, share what you learned. There were so many great insights from Ray today, so many great moments of wisdom and principles. Extract them, share them on Twitter or on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, and I'll share my favorite ones as well. Make sure you tag Ray and I in those messages, and we can't wait to see you again next week. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So great.